Qualifying is critical to a driver's success come race day. With 29 lead changes at Michigan just a year ago, drivers know a seat on the pole doesn't guarantee victory, but it does set the tone for the 500-mile marathon. Today, we find out who will lead the field to the green flag. From the beautiful Irish hills of South Central Michigan, we're at Michigan Speedway as the CART FedEx Championship Series is ready to qualify for tomorrow's running of the Michigan 500. And we've seen practice speeds up and above 238 miles an hour. But those kind of speeds require RPMs at 16,000. And it's taken its toll, a very expensive toll in engines throughout the practice. Here's Jan Vikas.
Well, that's right, Paul. We have seen some problems during practice and qualifying, but remember, those engines were not of the 500-mile variety. The engine manufacturers have been working very hard for specialized engines for the race, but they don't go in until after today's run. Now, talking about making changes between qualifying and the race, look at the bottom here of Cristiano D'Amato's car. We've seen again here this weekend the single-sided turbo. You see a different looking exhaust on the lower right-hand side. What that is that is the side of the engine where the exhaust will not go through the turbocharger. Saves you about 10 or 15 additional horsepower, so they won't race it because you can't get off the starts and restarts well. But today, maybe they'll give you a couple spots on the grid. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Yeah, we've seen that single-sided turbo set up for qualifying before, primarily with the Toyota power plants. But now, for the first time, one of the Honda drivers has incorporated that. And that man is Paul Tracy, who drives this car. Paul was talking about the fact that he's never won a 500-mile race and how significant that would be if he could break through here at Michigan, where he's done thousands of miles, literally, in testing. Well, this morning, you talk about speed, 238.9 put him at the top of the speed chart. But now the sun's come out, the cloud cover's gone away. There won't be a full field of cars circulating. You won't have benefit of all that extra air to suck up behind. Can Tracy put up one of those big numbers and maybe break a track record? That's what we're going to find out. With Paul Page, the draft. How important is that at this place?
Well, of course, you can only turn those big numbers in the draft with a car in front of you towing you along. I don't think we're going to see anywhere near 238 for the qualifying. Merely a 232 miles an hour. Is that fast enough for you? Parker Johnstone did it to sit on the pole in 1995. Had to be exhilarating.
Well, when the car's right, it's a fantastic experience. The engineers, in preparation for qualifying, get as much drag out of the car as they can, and they take as much downforce out as they think their driver can absolutely tolerate right on the limit. From a driver's perspective, you get as low in the car as you can to get your helmet out of the airstream, minimize drag. You hold the steering wheel with your fingertips, turning the wheel as carefully as you can to minimize tire scrub through these long sweeping corners. And coming off the last corner, you try to shortcut the tri-oval, you dive for the grass at the start-finish line, and if it all works out right, you've got the pole.
Well, already some of the cars have been out. Qualifying is underway. Tarso Marquez was out early, got the Swift up and moving, and qualified into the field. Luis Garcia Jr. in at just over 220 miles an hour. Shinji Nakano. And then there was a problem. Takuya Kurosawa going into turn 3 lost it, backed it into the wall and backed it in hard.
And that's one of the problems you have in qualifying. It's getting a little hotter. The cars lose downforce as the air density decreases. The car went loose on entry of 3, rotated into the fence.
For Kurosawa, the medical report was that he was unconscious at first, but awake and alert now with pain in the left foot and in the neck. He's been evacuated to Foot Hospital over in Jackson. Tony Kanaan on the circuit qualifies in at 225 miles an hour. And Mark Blundell just completed his run and qualified at 226 and a half. And that puts Mark Blundell, for the moment at least, on the pole. So qualifying is underway for the Michigan 500. It's the beginning of our coverage here for Michigan Speedway throughout the weekend, with the coverage of the race itself coming on ABC Sports. For more Log in to ESPN.com. That's part of the Go Network, go.com. So there's the qualifying to this point, with Toyota yet to get into this qualifying field and Blundell's Mercedes on the pole. Qualifying for the Michigan 500 is brought to you today by Quest, the communications to change everything. Adrian Fernandez on the track at Michigan Speedway. We've got quite a few things to get you up to speed on. It's been an interesting time thus far with 6 qualified. We just gave you the rundown of those 6. There they are once again, with Mark Blundell provisionally on the pole. Adrian Fernandez, Ford Power, warming up for the Patrick Racing team on a track that is 2 miles around, and with some considerable banking, which of course, Parker, is what helps produce all the speed.
Oh, absolutely. And there are a couple of key things about Michigan we don't see at any other track that the kart series goes to. It's wide enough and banked enough so that the drivers can run low, middle, or high during the course of the race. But today in qualifying, watch the distance between the left side wheels and that white line that lines the inside of the track. The higher the drivers can run on the top side of the groove, the more they can free the chassis up, the faster their lap times will be.
Adrian Fernandez actually coming off of the run at 231.169 miles an hour. And that gives him the provisional pole. Sits on the front row, which now would consist of Fernandez and of Mark Blundell. Tony Kanaan already qualified, Gary Gerald.
5 weeks ago, he had a horrendous crash in Detroit, and it was one that sidelined him. But amazingly, 5 weeks later, he's back running laps again. How's it feel, pal?
I feel great, Gary. I would say, I'm glad to be back, especially here. It's a special place for me. I really can tell that I worked really, really hard to be back here. I still have my 4 broken ribs, and my arm is still broken, but definitely it's working much better, thanks to Dr. Tremo and Ovi, all those guys who operate me in Detroit. So here I am, got hurt in Detroit, coming back in Detroit. So
are you concerned about 500 miles with the injuries?
Yes, it's it's going to be a hot day, and it's always tough. I mean, I'm physically fit, but definitely, you always have concern about your car. You don't know. It's 500 miles. It's really long race, so we're going to have to take really easy and try to bring to the end. And definitely, the guys who finish this race are going to finish well.
Defending champ is back, ready to go. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
And consider, Paul, 36 days after a multiple fracture of his left arm, his broken ribs, he's back in the race car, turning laps in excess of 225 miles an hour. It shows you the determination of what a 25-year-old can accomplish in an amazingly short period of time.
Here comes Bob. Roberto Moreno. Bob, as they're calling him in the pits now, the current points leader. On the first lap of his qualifying run, he is the teammate to Adrian Fernandez, who just qualified. Fernandez number up at 231.1 miles an hour. And we'll see what Roberto Moreno can put up. First lap at 227.9 miles an hour, 0.992. Kart qualifying takes the best of the 2 laps. Moreno on the backstretch and into 3. Sky conditions, weather conditions, again, make a big difference as he takes the checkered flag. And the second lap comes in at 228 miles an hour. So only good enough for second quick at the moment. With his teammate, Adrian Fernandez, is Gary Gerald.
Adrian, how tough is it to get a feel whether you've had a good lap or a bad lap when you're out so early?
It's very difficult because, Gary, you always are with a lot of people around. And even though you think you are not getting a tow, you're getting some sort of tow. And to know where you are really for qualifying of the balance of the car, you really need to run on your own and not worry too much about what other people are doing, because everybody's getting these huge tows, and that can mislead you a little bit for qualifying. So to be honest, at this stage, since we are a little bit back on qualifying position, we have no idea where we're going to end up. So hopefully good.
So the waiting game begins for Adrian Fernandez at 231 plus.
231.1 for Adrian. His teammate, 228.0. We really do expect speeds well above that. Only 8 have qualified. So when we come back, Memo Gidley is back. Back at qualifying for the Michigan 500 Michigan Speedway. This is the car normally assigned to Norberto Fontana, but it's Memo Gidley behind the wheel.
John Della Penna's had a lot of changes in the team over the last amount of time. Figured that Norberto didn't have the experience he needed on ovals, particularly super speedways. Drafted Memo Gidley to come in. Memo had just moved back to the Indianapolis area, taking all of his worldly belongings with him in the back of his pickup truck, consisting mostly of a shifter cart. But Paul, you and I see Memo at all the time, at all the events, looking for that ride, and his persistency has paid off.
First lap at 223.9 miles an hour. Here comes his second lap as he takes the checkered flag. He kicks it up to 224.6 miles an hour. So the time that he has spent in the shifters down at Gary Lee's place in Whiteland, Indiana, is actually paying off for him.
Well, it certainly keeps him sharp. I don't know how much of that skill and ability on a shifter cart translates to Michigan International Speedway. This place is a little unique in that if the car's right, or even if it's not quite right, you can run flat out. But with the thousands of miles of testing that I've done here, I've tried different lines, different techniques, and found that a driver, no matter what the car is doing, can make a difference of 3, 4, even 5 miles an hour just in line technique and car positioning.
Roberto Moreno has the points lead. He would have liked to grab a single point for qualifying on the pole. Gary Gerald, he did not. Is he happy?
No, 228. Do you need more speed, Roberto?
For qualifying, yes, we would need more speed, but in a place like this, you either qualify on pole to get an extra point, or it doesn't really matter where you start. I know the Vision Crew has a good race car for tomorrow. We've proven that yesterday, and we always have a very good strategy in the races, especially long races like this, and I'll be relying on Jim McGee and Pat Patrick to make the calls tomorrow and get me up front. I think we'll be okay. We have a good race car. Unfortunately, the qualifier hasn't been as fast as we would like to, but it's fast enough for what we need.
Good enough. That's the man who's right now sitting on top of that points heap, like you mentioned, Paul.
Well, and here's a guy who knows his ovals. Last year's Indianapolis 500-mile race champion, still looking for his first win in kart, but many think it will come sooner rather than later. Kenny Brick. And on 500-mile races themselves, there's Kenny's number.
And as you watch Kenny drive, a couple of key elements to look for is the positioning, as I said earlier, between the left side of the car and the yellow line that marks the inside of turns 1 and 2, or the white line through 3 and 4. Also watch here as he comes off of 4, how close he gets to the exit of the wall. The freer he can run the car, the closer he can run to that wall, the more speed he'll carry through the corner. Now watch how he dives for the start-finish line, trying to shortcut the tri-oval. And the final thing is watch how high he keeps the car coming into turn 1. A lot of drivers dive inside as soon as the banking transitions. They end up scrubbing off a lot of speed on the mid-cornered exit. Kenny doesn't do that. He stays high, rides that high groove all the way around. And now on this lap, watch how he lets the car out to the wall and then dives for the start-finish line. He knows his way around super speedways.
Brett does not appear to have any fear or even recognition that those walls run alongside the outside edge of the racetrack. First lap in for Kenny Brack at 231 miles an hour. It splits him between Fernandez and Moreno.
Running a little bit lower through 1 and 2 than I would expect. He's probably not as happy with the car balance as he would have liked. Big difference running by yourself here than it is when you're in traffic. You can see he ran low through 3 and 4 as well. Doesn't use up the wall or use it up out to the wall at all. Very conservative on the exit there. But it's still good enough for the quick time.
231.772 miles an hour. The provisional pole shifts once again, and this time it's in the hands of Bobby Ray Hall and Dave Letterman's driver, Kenny Breck. Jan Beekes.
Well, we've caught up with Super Dario here, and let's see if he can predict the pole for us. We see 231 so far. What do you think it's going to take?
Probably a couple of miles an hour quicker than that. Although 231 on your own is pretty good, I think. Problem is everybody can get in toes out there in practice. We've been seeing speeds upwards to 238, but I think a 232, possibly a 233 will take it.
Can you do that?
We'll soon find out.
Thanks. Gary?
With Memo Gidley now, and we were talking about stepping in here, and you were somewhat at a disadvantage because you had that big blow up at the end of the practice session this morning. Now you go to the backup car. Did that handicap or hurt you?
Yeah, we had a great car this morning. I mean, we were like 10th when we were running out there, and it was just so great. Such a change from yesterday. and we blew up the motor and had to switch. We couldn't get it done in time, so we had to go in the backup car and also in a race motor, which is a little bit different than a qualifying motor. So it's unfortunate because I'm flat out in fourth gear around here and it just won't go any faster, so it's helpless. But the car's great. I mean, the team did a great job switching it over. It's just tough circumstances to make it work.
All right, wish you well tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well, Dario Franchitti's predicting 232. I'd say it's going to have to be a high 232. We have 10 qualifiers thus far. Sun has been bearing down on the track for some time. It'll heat up a little bit, but it's probably pretty much where it's going to be as we watch Christian Fittipaldi.
Yeah, this year, remember, they've changed the underwing of these cars. Last year, they had to run tunnel blockers, which are essentially triangular pieces of, or blocks that they stick at the back of the car to reduce the exit of the under tray, reduces downforce. This year, those regulations have carried out through the whole year. So they've designed under trays, which incorporate essentially where those tunnel blockers were. The car's more efficient this year, less drag, more downforce, which is exactly what you need here so the teams can actually trim it out. But as it gets hotter, they lose downforce. Usually that means a decrease in lap speed and increase in lap time.
As we watch Christian Fittipaldi, Kenny Breck is with Gary.
Kenny, how tough is it to get a lap at nearly 232 miles per hour by yourself?
It's tougher definitely than in practice because now you have no wind that helps you along, but that's all it had. That was a pretty good lap.
Are you looking forward to the fact that you get all that wind moving tomorrow with 4 other guys out there with you?
The car's good. I'm looking forward to it. If it's not, I'm not looking forward to it.
Simply said. Very nice.
Well, and so much for a 232, high 232, as Christian Fittipaldi lays down a 233.857 and takes the provisional pole and does that on the first lap. We'll see how the second lap comes up. He takes it up again, 234.2 miles an hour.
Yes, perfect car, absolute perfect.
Keep in mind, the track record's held by Jimmy Vasser at a 234.6. That happened back in 1996. A lot of people didn't think we'd see that speed again, but I think we'll see a new track record before this day's over.
And really here only halfway through the qualifying order, but as Christian said, this man, saved but for the last half mile of the race last year, could today call himself the defending champion of the Michigan 500, but he ran out of fuel with just a few hundred yards to go. Max Pappas on the track, ready to qualify. While we were away, Mauricio Guzman turned in nearly identical laps at 225.6 miles an hour, and that qualified him currently in the 8th position.
Keep in mind, Mauricio is the closed course world record holder at 240.9 miles an hour, a time he turned at Fontana, 1997.
First of his 2 qualifying laps as you ride on board with Max Pappas.
Watch how relaxed his hands are here. He actually has his hands open a little bit. Lets the car through the corner just as gently as he can, uses up all the road right to the exit, right out to the concrete, dives for the inside. You hear no change in the RPMs virtually. He's full throttle. The car just scrubs a little speed as he turns the wheel.
First lap good enough for third quick at 231.2.
See his head moving around. It's much better than it was in years past. There's still a lot of turbulence. The wind noise is so loud that the drivers actually can't hear the engines behind them at 230 miles an hour.
Max Pappas heads for the line. Thus far, the second lap has been quicker for almost everyone. It is for Max, but not nearly enough at 231.3, currently third.
Back. P3 right now.
Bobby Rahal talks to his driver. The pole sitter at the moment is Christian Fittipaldi, Gary Gerald.
He's talking about a perfect race car. Not often that driver gets out and says it was perfect. Were you surprised you were able to go that quick?
I was surprised I was able to pop into the 34s. I thought we were going to do about 232. The car was perfect. We couldn't get any more speed out of it. I was wide open both laps, and we'll see what happens. It's a long race here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in the top 4, top 6, and we have a good race car for tomorrow, and there's 500 miles in the office of enjoyment tomorrow.
We look forward to it. Thanks, Christian.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Yeah, when you've got it knocked like that as a race driver, know you have a great car. It feels terrific. Or a winner of the race. Jan?
Yes, and also the track record holder. Were you surprised by Christian's lap?
A little bit. We thought maybe 233s, but I mean that's a good package, and they can certainly go quick. I mean, he did, so I think that's a good lap, real good.
Your track record, I believe, is what, 234.6. So do you think that'll get broken today?
I don't know. It looks pretty close, so it's highly possible.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. Have a good run.
All right, thanks.
234.665. Jimmy's track record here. And here is Helio Castroneves in his new ride for Roger Penske, pole sitter a week ago on the streets of Exhibition Place in Toronto. Unfortunately, turn 3 of the first lap.
Green. Boost up, Helio, boost up.
He went sliding off, so he has yet to convert that top qualifying position into a good run. Oh, that looks like a motor.
And we heard Tim Cedric just tell him.
Engine problem, Helio. Engine problem. Come in the pit. Come in the pit.
A driver doesn't need telemetry data to know that.
Ready, guys.
All right, Tim Cedric, the team manager, talking to Helio there as he has an engine go on the backstretch, and they haven't rolled the equipment, so maybe we'll be able to keep qualifying going. Let's go down to Gary Gerald.
And with Max Pappas currently third right now, Max, how satisfied are you with that qualifying run?
Myself, very much, On lap 2, I put the flat. I took my foot off, when I got the checker flag. But, I don't know, not enough speed. I felt okay, but I thought we could have done a little bit better. 232, around 232.
Looking forward to get one here after the heartbreak of a year ago tomorrow?
I'm going to go out there tomorrow with a lot of will to succeed as usual, and you're going to see me fighting.
We look forward to that. Max Pappas, Paul.
Well, Helio Castroneves climbs out of his car. They have sent some of the equipment out to check the backstretch, make sure that he didn't spray any small parts or oil onto the backstretch. So qualifying for the moment, a short interruption, but we'll be back with more from Michigan right after this. Back at Michigan Speedway, the cleanup now complete for Helio Castroneves, and Gilles de Ferran moves on to the racetrack, begins to warm up. Patrick Carpentier took the course while we were away and is the first one of the group to have the second lap actually run just slightly slower than his first, only slower by 400ths, but qualified him second quick in the field. Gilles de Ferran, as he comes around to the start-finish line, will take the green flag and start his qualification run. Very impressive practice speed. Remember, most of the practice speeds we're showing you were probably run with the benefit of the draft from a car ahead. Gilles de Ferran off of 2, down the flat backstretch.
Ferran's best qualifying performance in the past. He's qualified 3 times at the 97, 98 US 500, and then again at 98 Fontana.
Ferran comes to the line first lap at 232.9 miles an hour. That'll eclipse the run of Patrick Carpentier and put him second. We'll see whether or not this second lap goes up or down, remembering that Carpentier went just slightly slower. Had sunshine on the track throughout the qualifying run.
You can see Gilles running a high line, which is what you want if the car's working for you. It dives to the start-finish stripe and goes slower on the second lap.
So just like Carpentier, pretty much the same maneuver. Comes in his second lap at 232.6 miles an hour. But de Ferran is in the field. But Jan Bikas, there's a lot of work going on with regard to Helio Castroneves, is there not?
There is. In fact, they are getting a spare car ready for you, Helio. I know they're looking for tires, maybe taking the one off the car you already ran. Did you get enough time to get a feel for your car?
Well, yes, I did actually. On the third lap, on the open lap, which was green flag, we just did like 231. And I went just for flat on the turn 1, and I don't know what happened, just give up, I think. So I was ashamed because looks everything under control. I hope I have a time to go for the 1 lap in the end.
Will Gilles be able to help you now that he's done his run?
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk now, see what's the change, and and put in my car now.
Thanks, Adele. Let's go to Gary.
And as DeFerrin checks in at 2:32.6, I believe it was, puts him number 2. Patrick, that slides you down a slot to the number 3 position. But I'm curious, the second lap was slower than the first. Did that surprise you, or was there a reason maybe why it was slower?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of guys were slower on their second lap today, and that's what we found this morning, that the tires came out to pressure very quickly, and the first lap was the best this morning too. So we kind of predicted that, but we're hoping the first lap was going to be faster.
Now, as far as the race itself is concerned, in your mind, how important is this whole business of starting position for the 500 miles?
It doesn't matter. You know, Greg started at the back very often and ended up at the front. And a lot of guys, you never know who's going to win. You know, it's a long race. And if first you got to finish, and a lot of guys don't. And if you have a car that's good into traffic, I think it's a lot more important than where you're going to qualify.
I look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you.
On the course now, the rookie Oriol Servia. Catalonia comes off of his Indy Lights championship and up to drive for Cal Wells at PPI. And we're talking Toyota power here, and we're talking the SST.
Sounds very different as it passes our position in the booth. It sounds almost like the engine's gone flat. For a normally twin-turbo Champ Car engine, you would think something had gone wrong. It's just because the one bank of cylinders is essentially being vented directly to atmosphere, gives it a different sound than anything else in the paddock.
Back down to Gary Gerald.
With Gilles DeFerrin now. This morning in practice, it looked like you were doing everything you could to stay out of the draft. Did it work out for you?
I think it did. I mean, we were exactly trying to figure out the balance by ourselves, and the car is really handling quite well, and pretty happy with the car so far.
2:32.9, is that what you kind of targeted, or is that in the ballpark?
Yeah, we didn't trim out everything we could, you know. We just wanted to be safe in the race, and I guess we accomplished that, and I feel like we have a pretty good car for tomorrow.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, with the sound of the SST engine, 7th best is all that Oriol Servia can manage. His best lap, his second at 229.511 miles an hour. But coming up, guys like Dario Franchitti and Juan Montoya. Honda, with DeFerrin, is able to split the dominance that the Ford engines have shown at the top of this qualifying field. Well, when we left you, Oriol Servia had just qualified 7th, and now rookie Alex Tagliani is on the circuit, turning in his first lap at 232.333 miles an hour. And that's good enough for third quick. 7 of the cars of the 17 that have run turned their quickest lap on the first lap. The rest on the second. We'll see what Tagliani does.
And no matter what your experience is, whether it's Indy Lights, Atlantics, no matter how fast you've gone, for any driver that comes to Michigan, the first time that you go down into turn 1 at 238, 240 miles an hour and roll the steering wheel in flat on the floor with a throttle, that takes your breath away. It takes a little time to get used to that, but once you do, it is one of the most exhilarating experiences you can ever have in a race car.
Now, the second lap at 232.326, just 100th slower, but we're starting to see that develop as a pattern. The pole sitter is still Christian Fittipaldi at 234.3, but his teammate Michael Andretti is getting ready to come out, Jan.
Oh, that's right. And Michael, I'd have to say you must be really excited after seeing how fast Christian ran.
Yeah, I just hope we can beat him. He put up a really quick lap there. I don't know if we have it or not. We'll have to wait and see.
Are the cars similar?
Yeah, they're pretty identical. So, you know, it'll just come up to conditions and things like that. It feels a little windier now than when he ran, but, you know, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, considering Christian said the car was perfect, Michael is hoping that his also is perfect. Gary?
Parker was talking about rookies and the experience the first time at running down into turn 1 at Michigan at nearly 240 miles per hour in the draft. What's it been like for you, Oriol?
It's a lot of fun. It's quite similar to the Indy Lights when you drive by your own, but when all the cars are out there, I mean, with the traffic, it's big difference. The drafts are huge. You have to pay a lot of attention in the corner to have some cleaner. If not, there is no grip. There's things that I have to learn, but I have 500 miles to learn them.
It'll be a real learning experience tomorrow. Wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now here is the Scotsman Dario Franchitti. Interesting thing happening within this team. Dario is running the more commonly used engine. Paul Tracy, his teammate's going to use the SST.
Yep, Dario's using the standard twin turbo setup. Keep in mind, it is a qualifying engine. They turn significantly more revs during this session than they will in tomorrow's race, some 600, 700, 800 RPM. But Paul Tracy is the only one of the Honda runners of Penske, Team Green, or Walker Racing that's using that single-sided turbo. Now, I've heard estimates. Jan talked about 10 or 15. I got one engineer to admit to a little bit more. But as Jan said, the problem is you're running one large turbo. It takes a long time to spool up. It's great when you're flat on the floor by yourself during qualifying, but it's not workable during traffic since it takes so long for that big turbo to spool up, to come up onto boost, come up onto power, and try to make a pass.
And pretty hard to get a real straight answer on how much of an advantage it is. Dario Franchitti at 233.078 miles an hour, second quick behind Fittipaldi. Even though they're going to run the SST in qualifying, that's not something you're going to see in the race.
No, you won't. They'll go back to the twin turbos. Some of the teams have talked about trying to race it.
Franchitti crosses the line and goes at 233.1, so he upped it a little bit.
Good try, mate. That's P2. Good job. See you in the pit.
But as Barry Green radioed, not good enough to take Christian Fittipaldi with his 234.2 mile an hour lap off of the pole. Let's go down to the pits once again. Here's Gary.
And with another one of the rookie drivers, Alexander Tagliani, you were so very strong early ovals, Rio de Janeiro, Miami. Do you think you can be that kind of a factor in 500 miles here at Michigan for the first time tomorrow?
I mean, I think so. I mean, the Polaris Foresight team is really strong on oval, and we seem to have a great race car everywhere we go. And it's going to be a key to have a good race car on this track. We could have been a little bit quicker in qualifying. It was hard to get a reading in the qualifying setup in practice because traffic, but we were a little bit too long on our gear, and we didn't pull up all the revs, so we know we have a little bit in the car.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rookie Alex Tagliani understands that you have to keep the car alive at those speeds over 500 miles. Montoya on the course now. His numbers. Starts in 500 milers 3. Of course, he won Indy. Is he going to be able to pick up this 500 miler as well?
Down one on boost. Down one.
Chip Ganassi telling him to go down. He's probably just starting to lift the pop-off valve. There's a micro switch that detects when the pop-off valve's starting to move. A light comes on the dash. Teams also see that.
Down one more. Down one on boost.
They also see that with the telemetry equipment. The driver is so focused, so preoccupied with just getting this car up to speed. It's one of the critical things, though, to try to get adjusted prior to starting your run, because if that valve lifts, it just kills your speed, not only for your first-time lap, but it kills the momentum for the beginning of the second lap as well. Working off of turn 4, comes on the line, and starts his qualification run, the defending series champion, Juan Montoya. And of course, this team, like the Toyota this weekend, running the single-sided turbo. I should correct what I said earlier. Normally, they feed both sides of the exhaust to a turbo. They change the size of the turbo depending on the sort of course. Here, they're just using one side to pressurize or feed the turbo to then pressurize the plenum. The other side being vented directly to atmosphere.
Montoya finishes the first of the 2 laps. Fourth quick, 232.5. He's really going to have to kick it up on this one if he wants to even approach the speed laid down by Christian Fittipaldi.
Currently, you're P4. Currently, P4.
And you can see in comparison to Dario Franchitti's lap how low he's running, how close he's running to the inside line. Now diving for the start-finish line.
232.2, so it comes up slower.
P4.
And it's
32.5.
232.5 was the fastest of those 2 laps. So the big question now, with very few to go, Vassar, D'Amato, Andretti, Tracy, what's Paul Tracy thinking about all this?
Well, he's just grabbed his helmet. He's getting ready to jump in the car. And Paul, are you shocked by Christian's lap like so many other people?
Pretty surprised. It was a pretty strong lap. I thought it would be in the 33s. But you know, I don't know what it's going to take to do it. Obviously, we got to do better than Christian. So we'll just go out and see what we can do.
Have you run much on your own? You've got the huge speeds when it comes to drafting.
Yeah, the car is really good in traffic. It's hard to get a lap on your own, but not sure what we can do on our own. So we just go out and leave our foot down.
Thanks, Paul.
Paul Tracy, because he had the fastest time in practice, will be the last to qualify. But coming up, Vassar and D'Amata, and then Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy, and we'll find out what's going to go on with Elio Castroneves. We'll be back. Back at the Michigan Speedway, here is the teammate to the man you just saw qualify fourth quick. This is Jimmy Vassar, track record holder, former champion here, former series champion, as he begins his warm-up to qualify.
There's a good contrast between Jimmy and his teammate. You can see how high Jimmy's running the car in the groove. Some of that is predetermined by the chassis setup. If the car's pushing a lot, you've got to go down low. If the car's running a little freer, a little bit more neutral to loose, you can run it higher in the groove.
This is the end of the first of the two qualifying laps. Jimmy Vassar at 2:32.761, fourth place, and it pushes Montoya down one.